Hello, everyone. My name is Locke Vincent, and welcome to another episode of Nightdive's Deep Dive. I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend. You know him as Nightdive Larry, who takes care of biz dev over at Nightdive. How you doing, Larry? And who do we have for our fireside chat today?
I'm doing just great. Thank you for asking. And we have a very, very special guest, John Romero, a man that needs no introduction, but we're going to ask you to introduce yourself anyway.
All right. Thanks for having me. I am a game creator, to put it simply. Done pretty much every single job in making games. Started making games in 1979 and have started 10 game companies. And id Software was one of those companies. Einstorm was another one. And still making shooters today. So thanks.
John, we're not only aware of what you're doing today, but we are glad that you're still doing it. Let me just start off with an intro. So you're somebody that needs no real introduction, but you and I have a lot in common. We're connected through games like Doom, Doom 2, Quake 2. But the one that I'd really like to talk about is the game that inspired me to get into the games industry, the game that I first played and said, "Oh, I want to be involved in this somehow," which is Wolfenstein 3D. John, I want to ask you. I mean, it's a game that started, arguably the first person shooter genre. What was the inspiration for you when you sat down to create Wolf 3D?
Well, Wolf 3D was actually our third first-person shooter, and we were making a Commander Keen game on January 1st of 1992 because we just shipped 3 Commander Keen games in December. We shipped Keen 4, 5, and 6, and went on vacation, came back, and like, all right, let's start working on the next trilogy. So we were starting to work on the next trilogy. We're doing VGA, parallax scrolling, platforming game, which is what Commander Keen was. We basically, okay, so we worked a lot. So at 1 a.m, we're all working this one day, and I just stop and I go, guys, we should not be making this game. And they're like, what? Like, they turn around. There's only 4 of us. And I said, we just shipped like a texture map 3D game, Catacomb 3D. We just shipped that at the end of November. We should be making more games like that. That's the future. This 2D platforming stuff has been done for a long time. Like, it's over for platforming. We should be making 3D stuff. We can do a better job than Catacomb 3D. And so John Carmack and Adrian are like, yeah, that sounds great. Carmack's like, that's cool, because he wants to keep evolving his work in 3D. Tom Hall wasn't so happy because Commander Keen was his baby, and but he could see, like, yeah, that makes logical sense for us to like really get out there. We need to keep innovating, and so we're like, all right, so what would the game idea be? We talked for just a few minutes, and then I finally said, why don't we remake Castle Wolfenstein in 3D? That would be amazing. And Tom and John immediately are like, oh my God, that's amazing. I'm like, yeah, can't you get excited about that? Adrian, the artist, had never played it because he wasn't an Apple II guy, but he saw that we're all excited about it, so he figured it must be cool. So basically, the very next day, we started working on Wolfenstein 3D.
That is just such a cool story. The other thing, I just want to point out for all the kids, for all the fledgling developers that might be listening to this podcast and thinking about it, all the really important conversations in game development take place at 1 a.m. or thereafter. All right.
Yeah.
So if you feel bad about missing that 9 a.m. meeting, don't worry. It probably wasn't important. Just capture the ones that take place after 1:30.
Yeah.
That's cool. I remember I have a sense memory. There are 2 games in the early 90s that really affected me physically. Wolf 3D was one of them. When I realized that it was my hand holding the gun, that there was that moment of, I don't know, parallax, that I was in the game, that I remember feeling that physically. Now look, I'm older than you. I'm older than that. I do tell the story that that Warren Spector once opined that he's got to be the oldest guy left in the game industry, which caused me to immediately look up my friend Warren and find out that I'm 3 or 4 days older than him.
Nice.
So there's that. But I was a grown man. I mean, I was the father of a child when I was when I was playing that game, and yet I have that memory of it almost 35 years ago. I can remember how that felt. The only other game, and it's also through from a mutual friend of ours. The only other game that I remember creating that same visceral, physical feeling was Descent. Was the original Descent, and I've told the story a couple of times, but whatever success that I have had in the games industry and in the business world, at the early days, I owe it to the start that Matt Toshlag gave me. I'm pointing that direction, and I still don't understand how I work with people with so much hair and I have so little.
Yeah, Matt's got some really long dreads.
I've got pictures of him from back in Ann Arbor, and and from the front you can see the dreads hanging down in the back. That is truly impressive. That's a man who has made a commitment to hair. Um, okay, so we know a lot of people in common. Another connection that we have in common is our friend Paul Neurath. Didn't you work with Paul on Space Rogue?
Yeah, I was working at my first job in the industry was at Origin Systems, and I got my job there in 1987.
Nice.
My first job was porting 2400 AD from the Commodore 6 or from the the Apple II to the Commodore 64. And when they basically decided to cancel that project after, I don't know, 5 months, something like that, and immediately put me on Space Rogue because Paul had been working on it for a couple of years at least there at Origin, and so I started writing some tool stuff for the NPCs, um, and it was a really cool game. You know, he took the deep space engine that he and Ned Lerner had made, and they kind of split the code base, and let themselves both use that engine. And so he was using it for Space Rogue, and it looked really cool. And it had like the dither fill polygons on the Apple II, but when you landed on a base, then it was overhead Ultima. So it
Right.
was like RPG and space flight and everything. It was really cool. This is total 80s like mashup territory when there wasn't really genres too much, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool. I worked on that game for several months before I decided to found a startup. And Paul had asked me before I left if I would, start a company with him. And I told him I'd already like promised the week before to found a company with my manager there,
Hmm.
but he was starting Blue Sky
Mhm.
Productions right after that.
So there was it somewhere in an alternate universe, you and Warren Spector worked for the same company.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
but we did though.
Yeah,
We
Yes.
did at Iron Storm.
Right.
I will. That's right. That's right. I will comment for the kids out there that have no idea what Space Rogue is about. Nightdive Studio also publishes that.
He published everything, I think.
We try. We try. When it comes to classic games, Steve Kick really is the one that makes those decisions. But we kind of go through, got it, want it, got it.
Nice.
Uh, all right. So if your bio is correct, then you left Origin Systems to co-found Inside Out Software,
Yeah.
and then you left Inside Out to join Softdisk in '89, and you
Yeah.
hired John Carmack, Adrian Carmack, and Tom Hall. Right. That was the original team.
That was the original team. The way that everyone came together was similar to that, but I was there at Softdisk for at that time I was there for over a year. probably a year and 4 months before I actually created the new division at the company, and then brought them in. Tom Hall, I got to hire him later. He was actually part of a different department. He was in the Apple II department, and so I got me and my friend Lane Roth, got him out of the Apple II department. Adrian Carmack was an intern in the art room next to me. He was making $5 an hour, and I went in there and was like, "How about the cool guy with the long hair? Hey, dude, do you like metal?" And he's like, "Yeah." I said, "You want to make game art?" And he's like, "Sure." and then John Carmack was actually the only person I needed to interview and meet and convince to join us, and that's a fun story. But we finally got John to move down from Kansas City, and then we basically got in the same room, started on August 1st of 1990 together.
So
Nice.
so I walk into that room first of all, Shreveport in the summer, a lovely place. If you like humidity,
If you're gonna burn,
as you swim to work, but I get into that room. What are the conversations like? Are you guys spitballing ideas? I mean, so much came out of that group.
yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on there. Unbelievable amounts of stuff happened very quickly in August and September. In August, you won't believe this, but we needed to make a demonstration disc that we could distribute for free on a sister product that had 50,000 subscribers. Yes, disc subscriptions is the business, right? And so we were told by marketing that John and I had to make 2 games in 1 month, because they were going to take that disc and put it on the monthly disc that they shipped in the other sister department, which
Got
had
it.
like little utilities and stuff. So John and I said, we need to take a game that we already made, that we designed on a different platform, and we need to make a PC version of it in 1 month. So we're not doing design. We're doing code, pure code, as fast as we can. And so John picked Catacombs. He had just finished making it on the Apple II. And I picked a game I made called Dangerous Dave in 1988, basically to port that. And so we did that. We did it in 1 month.
Didn't Dangerous Dave have an additional title?
Well, there were other Dangerous Daves. There was Dangerous Dave in the Haunted Mansion, and Dangerous Dave Returns.
It was the IP infringement one that I was thinking of.
Yeah, that was the start of id Software, basically.
Yeah.
That was the demo that started id Software the day I saw it.
Famous, or infamous, depending on how you look at it. Things were different then. It was a lot more the Wild West. I can't imagine either of our attorneys looking at the words IP infringement on the game and not having an aneurysm.
I know. What's funny though is like it didn't feel like it was the Wild West back then. Just like right now does not feel like the Wild West, but they're going to call it the Wild West in about 20 or 30 years, right?
So titles that we have in common. So you made all the Commander Keens. Let me start off by saying that so I started working with computers in the early 1980s, but it wasn't the fun stuff. I was in healthcare, and we were using timeshare connected to a mainframe computer system in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, that only went down when it snowed, and it never does that in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Uh, um, so it was a great computer system. Just don't plan on using it, say, I don't know, December through March. But I was doing that stuff. By the mid '80s, I moved to PCs. But again, there was nothing fun in it. I was loading up Lotus 1-2-3, and there was actually a graphics program called WYSIWYG. The real name of it was WYSIWYG. It was one of those if you know programs. But I would come into work in the morning. I was a heavy cigarette smoker then, so I would come into work in the morning. I would put in the DOS boot disk and cold boot the computer to that. Then I'd go out for a cigarette break. I'd come back in from the cigarette break, and hopefully DOS had finished loading, and then I could put in the Lotus disk, and that would load. out for another cigarette. You know, I mean that was kind of how my day was structured. By mid-afternoon, it was ready. So when people were starting to talk about computer games, I was like, "What's fun about this?" It took me until my first Windows 3.1 PC that I began to explore it, and I was the recipient of those shareware discs you're talking about.
Ah, right.
I was married, the father of one. We were working on a second child. I didn't have a lot of money to spare, so if it came with a shareware disc, I bought it, and whatever was on the shareware disc, I played. Which is how I played Commander Keen, which is how I would later discover Doom. I mean, you know, and that's how I learned about gaming. You know, the early days of that. All of those games are important. I mean, certainly by the time you get up to Quake, are you guys realizing that you've done something special? That there's something magic happening there?
Well, I mean, we knew that from the very beginning when with Commander Keen. We basically were doing we had a hardware, we had a technology that no one had yet on the PC that has been sitting there ready to be taken advantage of. The PC shipped in August of 1981, and it's August, September of 90, and in 9 years no one has done what John did in just a few hours at night. And
That's
it's
crazy.
crazy.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. The thing is, and there were people writing games in assembly language, right? But it's just, you had to have the right information. And that book was critical. The Power Graphics Programming book by Michael Abrash that just came out that year. And I gave it to Carmack, and he said he was interested in learning about graphics. And I said, this book has everything in it. I gave it to him. And then he just like, that was it. He went off. And when that technology, with that technology, that's how we started id Software and made the Commander Keen games. That's how we, in 1991, we made 13 games. 3 of those were the Commander Keen games. One of those was Catacomb 3D, the first texture map 3D first person game. And Hover Tank was another 3D game that year. So 13 games.
I had forgotten about Hover Tank, and
Yeah.
that was a summer that I remember that one being an addiction for a while.
Yeah. So it's like, we had tons of practice, and then Wolfenstein was the first time that we were able to say, we're going to take as long as it takes to make a game. Before that, it was always 2 months. We were making games for 2 months for like a year and a half. And so finally, it's like, no more time limit. We do it as fast. We do it as well as we can. And it took us to ship to upload the shareware version of Wolfenstein. Took us 4 months. So 4 months was luxury for 4 people making this game.
Oh my God! Only one game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we knew that we were doing something really special because, well, for one, like, we'd never seen anything like it. We boiled the essence of the game down to the speed of the player and the movement, and got rid of everything that stopped the player from doing that. And the results spoke for themselves. Like, the amount of money that was coming in from Wolfenstein destroyed the amount of money that Keen was making, like, immediately. And we just kept making them better. And we knew before we started working on Doom, we put out a press release that basically said it's going to revolutionize PC games and graphics. As we started making the game, which is nuts. You don't put out a press release before you start making the game. That needs a lot of research and technology, but like, we knew we were going to do it, like multiplayer, like all these things that hadn't been done before, but we did it, and we knew what it was going to be. And we kind of did the same thing with Quake. We said what we're going to do. Yeah.
Just an aside. I mean, everyone that's listened to this knows that my title is biz dev, and that's what I do. I've lectured multiple times on the business of games, but I'm going to tell people there is so much validation when it sells. For the history of Nightdive, I mean, we had done some pretty cool stuff. Before I joined, Steve had re-released System Shock 2. originally on GOG and then moved it to Steam. Console was not even in our dreams back then. But then we had done, some other stuff. We'd done the humongous games. We had brought on our first programmers and had done Strife. But then came the December that we released the first Turok game. And there was a certain amount of skepticism about whether this would work the way that we hoped. And I'm going to sound incredibly mercenary, but I remember the day that it went live. It was at the wrong time. It was the lead up to Christmas. We didn't think anyone would see it. It comes out. It didn't get a whole lot of press, but we're sitting there watching the Steam numbers hitting F5 over and over again.
Yeah.
And going, oh my God, we've got something here. And
Nice.
and there was that moment. I'm sure you had the same thing with Wolf 3D, that there's this validation that not only do people like us, but they're willing to pay money like us.
Yeah. Yeah. It was funny because back then this is pre-internet.
Yeah.
So, Usenet was the only thing that we had to kind of tell how well our games were doing. There's a weekly top 100 that we were on the top of, like with Commander Keen. And for the first time, we were interviewed for a radio, like for the radio on the car.
Wow.
And then we were the TV channel 8 from Dallas came over and videoed us while we were making Wolfenstein. And then when we shipped Wolfenstein, the final 60 levels, 6 episodes, hint manual, everything, we took a vacation. We spent a week at Disney World.
We're going to Disney World. So go ahead.
Yeah, so we're gonna go for a week. We were there and we're all sitting in the hot tub and we're just talking about our game. And these guys in the next tub over there are just like, hey, you guys talking about Wolfenstein 3D? It's like, no way. Oh my God, somebody knows about our game. So it was like the very first time. We never had that with Commander Keen, but it's like pre-internet. But like with Wolfenstein, the awareness was just all over the place. So that's where it began, big time, was with Wolfenstein, middle of '92.
I think it's really funny when by and large people in our industry aren't good with fame. John, I don't know if you've ever heard this joke. How do you tell an extroverted game developer? He looks at your shoes while he talks to you.
Nice. Yeah.
I heard that when I first started working at Stardock, and it stayed with me all these years as
That's funny.
Steve Kick and I go out to Los Angeles for IGN Live last year, where we announced The Thing video game. And after the IGN Live was great success, we go out to dinner with some folks from Atari and our PR company. As one does. It's a The Thing is over. We're all going to decompress, and we're standing outside waiting for an Uber or Lyft or whatever. And the thing was, I was not wearing Nightdive apparel. I was actually wearing a TriOptimum shirt, which is the phony company from the System Shock games. So it's a business shirt, short sleeve business shirt. This is TriOptimum. And it was like that meme. A guy goes walking past with his girlfriend, and then his head spins around to look back at me. And he goes, "Is that the TriOptimum Corporation? Are you guys from Nightdive?"
No way.
And so we were thrilled about that. I mean, that has to be a real fan to make that connection between TriOptimum and Nightdive.
Yeah.
So that was across the weekend. I drive back to Vegas. Monday morning comes and I'm ready for a new week of business. And we're talking about what happened the weekend. And one of the guys from Atari says to the room, he says, "You don't know who these guys are, but people stop them on the streets of New York and Los Angeles going, are you the System Shock guys?" So
nice.
Claims to fame. And it's just a funny thing about our industry. All right. I want to ask you about a couple of games that people may not necessarily be aware of your association. So if I have the chronology right, you were worked on Heretic in 1994 while you were also making Doom 2. And then you worked on Hexen in 95 while working on Ultimate Doom and Quake because you can't be too busy, right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
So I got to tell you, Hexen and Heretic are among my favorite games. I mean,
Yeah.
much of the top 10 list. What was it like working on those titles for you?
It was great. Starting Heretic was I tried to work with Raven since I found out about them in 1991. It was about the end of 1991. Id Software moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and it was basically there was in the classified ads was an ad for a programmer needed at Raven Software. And when I saw the name, I'm like, that's a game company name. Come on. And so I called them up and I said, hey, you guys are looking for a programmer? And like, yeah. And I basically said, I'm with a company called id Software, and we just moved to Madison, and we make games just like you guys do. You mind if we drop by and say hi? And they're like, no, like, here's the address. So we all jump in the car and drive over to Raven, and we find out they're Amiga guys. They just got done making Black Crypt. There's only 3 dudes or 4 of them, I think. Yeah, Paul Radek was there for a minute, and then Ben Koke, and then the Raffle brothers. And so we're just hanging out, talking about Amiga games, talking about their game, RPGs. Art looks amazing. And I told them, we're doing PC games. So we were there for like 2 hours. And then we went back to work. It was probably like 10 or 11 at night. And then I'm thinking about it, and it was probably it might have been like 11 or something. And I was like, why don't we get them to use our engine? Make some games. Like, we could get them off the Amiga, which is dead,
Yeah.
and and get them in the PC. And so I basically contacted them and told them about it. I got it all set up with Scott Miller and everything, but they ultimately decided it wasn't the time for them to do that because they love the Amiga. But half a year later, after Wolfenstein, then I contacted them again, and they're now doing demos and stuff for PC. And like, yeah, we got to get into that market. And we were done with Wolfenstein, and we were starting to work on a more advanced technology for the next game, which was going to be Doom. But the technology was not as advanced as we wanted it to be. We took basically John Carmack took that Wolfenstein engine as far as it could go with the data structures that we had. So it had sloped floors, high ceilings, fog, all this stuff, but it just wasn't where we wanted it to be for Doom. So we licensed that engine to Raven. So it was our first business contact with them was licensing that Wolf Plus engine for Shadowcaster.
Okay.
So that's what they used to make that game. And then basically it's just like, okay, I'll contact you guys again later. We make Doom. Doom is shipped in the beginning of 1994. Contact them and tell them, okay, you know about Doom. Do you want to use that tech to make a game? And they're like, yes, absolutely. So we get, so basically I order all of the next step computers to be delivered to their office for the team. And then I fly up there in the beginning of January. So it's all snowy and icy.
Wait a minute. If you're flying up to Madison, Wisconsin, at the beginning, talk about a real commitment.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, it's not easy to get there. So I mean, I was just down in Texas, right? So it's just like going straight up. But yeah, I got there. I set up all the computers. I got them all networked internally on the the old BNC network and all that. Got the code running. Got the level editor running. Taught Ben how to edit the code, how to change it, how to compile and run it, because it was a cross compilation system where they developed the game on Next Step workstations, and then they just run it on DOS. So it saves out an executable to a network file server, and then their DOS machines just load up that executable, copy it to the C drive, and run it. So they can see the game, but also be in the level editor at the same time on a different computer. And that was great for the level editors. I taught them how to use the editor and all that stuff. And I was there for probably a few days, just talking about the game, how I want it to work, what they should be doing. to get this thing done fast on a brand new platform and all this other stuff, it was like, this is what you need to do. You cannot make a brand new, like no one's ever seen it before game. You got to use this engine and basically plug and play those weapons, turn them into medieval weapons, but leave the balance the same so it feels really good. And they did it. They just rocked. We kept on getting updates and just kept on working. I was the executive producer on it after designing it, and then they did it and did a great job and shipped it. I uploaded it December 23rd at 11 o'clock at night,
Nice.
and boom.
There we go. Just reinforcing that it all happens late at night in the game.
Always, all the time.
I'm also just thinking about the other end side of the phone call about getting a message that begins with, "Hi, this is John Romero, and I'm calling about that programming job." Uh,
Yeah.
how that might be received today. John, I have to ask you. So after those titles in '96, you leave it to found Ironstorm. We've talked a little bit about that, and Tom Hall comes with you, right?
Yep.
And that leads us to Daikatana, title with shall we say a certain reputation. What went wrong? What went right?
I think that one of the things it's when you start a brand new company, you're creating so much at once. You're having to create a culture. When you make a company that big, which was three games at once at the very beginning, that was before bringing Warren on. But Warren came on only like 9 months after we started.
Okay.
But really, it's like four teams, 120 people. It's trying to set up your infrastructure, focusing on making sure that's all good, and then being able to design a game and hire everybody and try to what I brought a lot of new people into the industry through Daikatana because I was kind of focused on modders because we had a really great engine. I licensed the Quake tech. So all the hard technology stuff was done, right? Now I need people that love games and they know content, and they know how to create the content, and then let's see what we can do. I designed the game and let's try and make that happen. I thought we could get it done really, really fast, but it's really not doable when everything is so new. Like people are trying to work with each other, like
You're trying to go across a bridge that you're building at the same time.
yeah. Yeah. Which is, I didn't think that we were doing that because I was thinking about the engine. We had this engine, so let's do it. But like, it's more than the engine. It's a team of all these interdisciplinary people who've never worked together. They're all at different levels of how much they know how to make stuff. And so it was just like a lot of people got hired very quickly. So it was basically keeping it together and keeping it moving forward, revising when necessary. But like it and the funny thing is, when you look at games today, it only took 3 years to make Daikatana, and that's with the whole team leaving halfway through and having to restart it.
Look, famously, I mean, I've done a video on what we went through, but growing Nightdive. I mean, we're not quite up to 50 people yet, and I've had the benefit of seeing other people's challenges, and so things like creating and maintaining the corporate culture is really important for us. Also, I can understand that, and especially when you get very ambitious. And you mentioned working with modders, which is great, but they're also typical. Look, we hire a lot of modders. We hire a lot of people from the Doom community. We always have. Um, the challenge is that they've worked on their own time schedules.
Yeah.
That it's if you're going to say, well, the game will be ready when it'll be ready, you better have a way of funding that.
Yeah.
People get all kinds of bad habits, like getting used to having shelter and running water and those things that you need money to buy, eating on a regular basis, and trying to manage that. Look, look, running a game company in general is like herding cats, right? We
Yeah.
hire people for their independence, and then we wonder why
Being
they're
independent.
Um, all right, so let me ask you, if you had it to all do over again with Daikatana, and what would you look to change?
I think that I would have brought on some more industry, like senior leads, at least at the very beginning. You can't have all seniors on a team. It's too expensive, and it's like when you're looking for new ideas, you get young new people in the game.
Right,
And so modders are those people. They're indies. These are people that love what they do so much they do it for free at home.
right,
And I want people with that kind of passion. So I brought a lot of people like that in, but I didn't bring in leads from the industry, at least in level design and programming and art and that kind of thing. That would have definitely helped uh, everybody becoming more professional just like there wasn't a lead level designer. Well, there was a lead level designer eventually when I actually brought someone from LucasArts in, and like a lead
right.
programmer from LucasArts and like all that stuff eventually got them, but at the very beginning I didn't. So it was very Wild West Yahoo, you know, and there was a lot of it was just a really interesting start of the company, but it was tons of fun. We had so much fun in 97, just when we first got funded and we first got into our first office, and the team was getting big, but we were like death matching. We're making a game, we're testing this death match. It's like it was really fun. And then we moved into a really nice, the top of the building, which is where everybody knows, like we're on the 54th 55th floor. um and it was still like it was still cool, but like there was a lot of light coming in from the sun. So there was like not optimal conditions for game dev, so everyone was like putting felt over their cubicles and stuff to keep the light out. But it was still like the culture was still very indie, extreme indie company. Tom's team was super fun next to us. Like everyone was just there, everyone was friends. I mean, it was cool. The culture there was like nobody was like, no one at the beginning. It was not like crunch mode. You better work.
Mm,
People are there late at night because they love it. They love
yeah.
hanging out with each other. They'll go out to dinner. They'll come back and they'll keep on making stuff. And it was the '90s, and
Yep.
it was just like it was totally like Wild West, but it was cool. It was the beginning of Daikatana. There was a lot of fun, but there was also I had a couple of co-founders that made it not so fun. And then that's when the team, decided to, part of the team left, and then I had to rehire people and then like really focus on getting the game done.
All of those challenges. That said, and I think that it still stands the test of time. There's a certain amount of brilliance to it.
Mm.
You again caught lightning in a bottle. However you want to do it. Um, all good on that. I wanted to ask you on the modern era, the kind of where we are today. I saw you last week. You were streaming Dusk from
Oh,
from
sick. Nice.
from
Yeah,
from our,
yeah.
from our friends at New Blood. You mentioned Scott Miller. Scott Miller, Dave Oshry, and I also have a shared heritage through Rise of the Triad.
Yeah.
Um, you know, games that we've worked on. But Dusk is a great game. New Blood is a wonderful indie studio. I also highly recommend Fallen Aces, which
Mm,
I had a lot of fun with that. Um, but
very cool art style.
New Blood has really brought a new generation of boomer shooters to it. What do you think the state of game dev is like today?
Um, it's so much bigger than it used to be. Um, the indie community is massive. If just go to itch if you want to see like itch.io, if
Yep.
you want to see just like how many indies there are out
Yeah.
there, how many games are released on Steam every month. Most of them are indie games. iOS, Android, like indie. And there's just a lot of really great ideas. Like when we look at the Game of the Year awards, it's most, half the time it's indies. Like Blatcho got some really great awards recently.
Larian for Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Our mutual friend Shams and the team, for Helldivers.
Yeah.
Claire Obscura, right? I mean,
Yeah. Or even, Valheim, like
Yeah.
Minecraft. These are all indies. These people are the ones that make the AAA companies go, oh, wait a minute, we need to start doing this.
I have to tell you, I'm very active in the IGDA. I work with a lot of kids who are working on that first prototype. They're not even working on their first game; they're working on their first prototype. And one of the funny things that that a young person said to me was that I can't be indie anymore because I'm too successful.
Like that. Sorry, that's not how it's defined.
My comment on that is, if you don't think I'm indie, wait till you see my T-shirt collection.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, my programming hero from the early 80s and in later in the 90s, he's always been an indie. In fact, he has never been an employee of a company before.
Hell yeah.
He has always been an independent contractor since 1980. And he's the one who in 87 made Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3. And then he made Secret of Mana in 1993, and then he retired.
Why wouldn't you retire after that?
Yeah.
That's like bowling 300. I'm done.
Yeah, he was done.
Perfect
he was already
record.
a programming god from 1980 to 1983. He was already like the industry had always watched him.
What's his name, John?
Nasser Jabeli. He's an Iranian American programmer.
We got to celebrate him. Got to celebrate him.
Yeah.
One of the themes, and it brings us to the reason that we do the deep dives. One of the themes that I've had personally is if we can all agree that video games are art, and I think we settled that debate in the 1980s sometime. Then, kind of by definition, the people that make video games are artists and deserve to be celebrated and remembered that way. And this is the last question. What does the future look like for you personally? What do you think it looks like for game development in general? And feel free to interpret that any way you like. Optimistic, pessimistic, somewhere in the middle, whatever you think.
It's always like the industry has mostly always gone up. It's the amount of people playing games is massive. The industry was really small back when I started, but it is like so huge that games are part of everything that you do in life, and you can play games anywhere that you want to play them on anything, really. And there's so many, like, you can make a game now and put it out there for people to get. Distribution is nothing now. Like back in the day, no way. Getting on a disc, that was expensive. To get in a store, forget it. You're never going to do that as an indie, right? Now it's all about discovery. How is somebody going to see your stuff? And that really is down to being a great game design, because we do not have a technology problem anymore. Technology is solved. Download Unreal Engine for free, make a game with it, and put it out for free. Like
I was watching games. It's a different world than you and I are in, but I saw 3 games yesterday that were all made in Godot.
Yeah, it was great.
It's not what I'm going for, but these are games that they can ship, and they, we're again. I'm very active in the IGDA. Our theme for the current iteration of Game Jam is make something that ships. Forget about the features. Forget about is it complete? Can it ship?
Yeah,
That's the task. And my developers, the young people that work for me, and they're all young compared to me. They know that my favorite words are, do I get to say ship it now?
Yeah. Please, let's get this out.
I I'll tell you. I started working at Stardock. This isn't really pertinent to game development per se, but it's pertinent to the economics of what we do. I started working at Stardock. I took the job in 2000. Started my first day was in February of 2001. Brad wanted me to have some time off, which wasn't in my vocabulary at the time. I had two kids to support, so I was interested in making those dollars and dimes. But I joined Startup at the time that we were transitioning from retail only to digital. And I explained to people there was no itch.io to put your game on if you were an indie. There was no Steam. There was no GOG. That wasn't out there. Instead, you had to go and you had to meet with the Wal-Mart buyers and the Best Buy buyers. A true story. We were shopping Gal Civ around, and I won't say what group it was, but it was one of the larger computer companies. And we bring in the pitch, and we're showing this 4X space game, award-winning space game. Started multiple iterations of that. And at the end of the presentation, one of the women that we're pitching it to says, I don't really like this kind of game. You know what kind of game I like? What's that game that you play on Windows? And she's fumbling around trying to explain to me. And I said, Solitaire?
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, that's the one. And I just wanted to know if I could take back all the materials because there was not going to be any sale.
Pack
there.
it up.
Yeah.
Pack it up.
There was no connector between Gal Civ and Solitaire on that one. So if I was doing Balatro, I could have had a sale. But
I have a story about that too. Back in the 90s, Walmart had a ton of power in the industry because tons of people went to Walmart to buy their games, physical games, in boxes and everything. And unbelievably, luckily, GT Interactive became the gatekeeper of all Walmart sales. They're the ones who allowed anyone in. Luckily, we were the star child of GT Interactive because they were the first people that came to us with Commander Keen, even at the very beginning. So when it came to Doom 2, we were everywhere, right? And so they could get us in, and they were very gatekeepy. The funny thing is that the main buyer for Walmart was in Texas, and when GT went to them to basically go, here are all the games I'm going to be putting in the store, like because they just like, we don't know nothing about software, so that's why we want GT to do this. And so when they had the meeting, the guy, after I don't know how many years they've been meeting, the buyer goes, I don't know how to play any of this, space alien games and whatever stuff that keep putting on the shelf. What I want is I just want a deer hunting game. You make one of those and I guarantee you'll sell out. And so GT goes, you got it. And they went and they had already acquired WizardWorks because they were making Doom mods and putting out tons of levels. And they basically told them, you need to make a deer hunting game. So like, okay, Deer Hunter. So they made Deer Hunter.
A gazillion copies through the
category, right? There's an entire category.
I have never understood that, and I've also never understood Europe's fascination with simulator games.
Yeah.
European farming simulator.
Hey, after you're done work, go do work.
Yeah. The hunting genre was because of Walmart.
That's crazy.
That is just a great story. I have stories about the problems. I was selling white box computers at that time, and I'll tell you some of the stories about Deer Hunter at another time.
On Romero.com, we have boxed versions of Sigil 1 and Sigil 2 and Catacomb 3D for the first time in a big box. So those are new things. It is including Sigil 1 and 2 on the cover of the box for the new Doom 1 and 2 that they're going through limited run.
Yep.
So I'm working on Hellion, which is a 32 level Doom 2 expansion that I'll put out, and then I'm going to make a Quake one after that.
Nice.
But I'm also working on a first person shooter every day, all day.
Yes. Yes.
So I just do this at night.
Don't reinvent it after 1 a.m.
They're on our shop. Yeah, Romero.com.
Yep.
And there's at least 100 items. If you're a collector of Heretic, of Hexen, of Quake, Daikatana, whatever, you can buy all of those things on our site. You can
Perfect.
buy Doom and Heretic shareware.
But John, I wanted to thank you very much for this time, and we really appreciate it. And seriously, I I'm going to tell you on a very personal note. Thank goodness you made Wolfenstein 3D. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a job today.
All right. You'd be doing banking or something, right?
I'd be in America's dirtiest industry, healthcare.
Right.
Cheers, and again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.